Sometimes dogs can seem a little bit sneaky, right? What if your dog would let in guests, but then as soon as they moved, attack them? This is what happened with a foster dog of mine, and I thought I would share this story today in our episode of A Dog's Soul and a Puff's Guide to Your Dog's Feelings. So stay tuned and have fun. Alright, so we're talking about Makuma. Makuma was, or is, a staff Shar-Pei mix, and she came to us when she was 2 years old. She had spent her first 2 years of her life in a kennel at a rescue station in Hungary, so a neighbor country of mine, and she was a pretty easygoing dog over there. She had no issues with the people there, with the dogs, with the cats. She walked on leash, not perfectly, of course. She didn't have any training or anything, but she would accept people putting a harness on her. She would just walk when a leash was attached to her, pull like crazy, of course, but not like panic or anything. And always in a good mood, right? So the shelter personnel was really a little bit in love with her, and they didn't understand why she wouldn't find a family, right? Because she was really sweet. So we got her as a foster dog, and we fell in love with her because she was just adorable. She was so goofy and so much fun. You could just goof around with her all day long. And she learned very, very fast. She was such a clever dog. Of course, also stuff we didn't want her to learn, but that's alright, right? And she got along with our other dogs. She was a little bit too much for our senior dog, so we did have to find a family for her. We could not keep her, but she was also fine with the cats. Just to be safe, we had a house leash on her, and our cat started playing with her house leash on the first day, and she just watched him, and it was so cute. So she was really a very adorable dog. But we had handyman over, like all the time. The house was still under construction. We redid the house, and it was a whole mess. It was people in and out all the time. And since she was always fine with people, we did not expect anything bad happening. But that was a mistake. So she taught us very quickly that guests were not something she was okay with, because in the beginning, she would just not let people in. So she would just do the usual territorial resource guarding property thing. So barking at fence, not letting people in, and she was a strong dog. She was small, but she was a strong dog. So people did not dare her. Even the big handyman guys, right? So, alright, we started training, and it worked pretty well, and the reconstruction with the handyman was almost done as well. She stayed with us, I think, about 7 months. So it was just a couple of weeks until the handyman were gone. So then guests were pretty much okay. They could enter. It was no more issue for her. We just did a little bit of a leash training, come with me training, stay with me training, get rewards, stuff like that, so that she could connect guests with positive emotions and all that nice stuff. And she picked up on that very, very fast. So that was no longer an issue. All right. But then something else started. She would let guests in, pretty much, but she would not let them out again. So she would let them in and settle down, all while in training mode, right? Dogs get into training mode. They know that while they are in this scenario, they feel good and nothing bad happens. So they kind of get into this mindset, right? You see it in their eyes, and you see they concentrate on you and stuff like that. And it's different than they look like in real life. So she was in training mode. Now, as the visits stretched on and people became more comfortable and we all relaxed a little bit, right? Of course, training mode faded away. somebody would get up, and that was no longer okay. So she would charge that person and bark at that person and snap at that person. And since we were still in training, we had a house leash on. So there was nothing gonna happen other than that. But that's bad enough, right? And so we started muzzle training because, let's be honest, a leash can slip through the fingers. It's not safe enough. And a dog who would snap might escalate to biting. So I don't want to take any chances with that, ever, with any dog. Not a Chihuahua, not a pit bull, not any dog. So that was one thing. But the other thing was that we needed a new strategy, right? It wasn't enough to just teach her that people were fine, because we also needed to teach her that people are fine and they are allowed to move in the house, and what she can do to feel okay with that, because she would not charge the person because she's evil or anything. She was the friendliest dog ever, right? But she would feel threatened in that moment. We cannot expect dogs to just draw the same conclusions we do. Like, if we assess a person and we trust that person, then we trust the person in our house and everything's fine. And that's not what dogs might do, right? The person might be fine outside. The same person might be fine in the backyard, but that same person might not be fine in the living room. Or the person might be fine in the living room sitting down, but not standing up. And we can never forget that houses are enclosed spaces. So there is not that much space to walk away, to avoid each other, to give each other space. And this can feel threatening. Also, if we are in a sitting arrangement, whatever sitting arrangement, maybe you're living in a mansion, I don't, and the sitting arrangements I've seen so far are all kind of tight spaces. So what happens is the person comes kind of close to the dog, at least from the dog's perspective. So walking straight toward the dog, or walking kind of close to the dog, or in any way threatening to the dog. So for Makuma, it seemed threatening. It had to be. That's why she reacted. And for us, it might look like the dog's sneaky or whatever. Like the dog's playing fine, but just waiting for an opportunity or anything. That's not the case for her. Yes, there are dogs who are trained with non-force-free methods, and those dogs try to contain themselves until they can't do that any longer, and then they snap. That's different. But that was not the case for Makuma. So for her, it was just, she really felt fine with the situation, but then suddenly she felt threatened by that person standing up. So what we did was, on one hand, we introduced guests more slowly. And we spent a little more time in the backyard with her and the guests, so she could have more space to just walk away and to get more space between herself and the guests, and she was a lot more relaxed outside with new people. So this was a game changer for her, and of course it got warmer as well, so this was just convenient. And what we also did was we taught her a very, very strong come to my side, so pretty much a target, and she could just walk to that target either side of me, either on the couch or wherever I was sitting, or just on the floor. And I would always position myself so that nobody would walk by me, or that there was some kind of barrier in between me and a hallway or whatever. So that was how she could enter a safe space. Of course, she did have a relaxation zone, but that was away from us as her caregivers, and that was just too much for her. So she was not feeling safe enough in her new home yet, so that she could walk away from us and to her relaxation zone. Yes, we could have trained that as well, And for the handyman in the beginning, sometimes we would split up and I would spend time with the dogs in the relaxation zone, so just another room, and my partner would deal with the handyman so that there was just no collision. But both dogs locked away for a longer period of time and just a new dog, and this is all not as ideal as I liked it to be. So yes, it would have been another option, but since it worked pretty well with the target, that was what we did. And since we were living in like the middle of nowhere, really beautiful, in the middle of the woods, very few neighbors, and you would meet nobody. If you walked your dog, you would meet nobody. No dogs, no people, sometimes tractors and cars, but really not that much, right? So what we also did was we started to do some exposing her to people and the real world, right? Because for foster dogs, they have to learn as much as they can to be as adoptable as they can. Now, she found parents who were absolutely amazing, and they gave her all the time she needed. But they were living in a city. So it was a good idea that we started doing some exposure with her. And she did really well with that. So since she was such a clever dog, she picked up on things like engage, disengage games and pattern games and all those things. So we just played the game of, hey, there's a person, look at a person, then look at me, then go sniffing. Things like that, right? It doesn't always have to be very strict or very obedience-based or whatever. It can just be a lot of fun, right? And we can pick a distance where it can be fun. If you get the feeling like you have to be very strict and you have to be very careful now, or otherwise your dog will lunge, then you are very close to a distance where your dog cannot no longer contain himself. So pick a larger distance. Of course, you can't do that at home, right? So that's why we always have different training scenarios. We have always different trainings that are complementary to each other, right? We cannot redo socialization with a dog that's 2 years old. So Makuma could not generalize people in a way a puppy could have. So if you have a puppy like 8 weeks old and you show that puppy 10 different people and all those people are nice. So every single one of those gives the puppy a nice experience. From the puppy's perspective, not the person's perspective, all right? So just to be clear about that, right? And if you do that, the puppy will generalize people as positive, and the puppy will expect the 11th person to also be positive. And this generalization is not possible for an adult dog who didn't make any experiences with people. What we can do is we can teach the dog a strategy. So Makuma could learn that whenever a person comes to the front door, she could come to my side and stay at my side and trust me that nothing bad will happen. Of course, I had to ensure that nothing bad will happen, right? If there was some scary moments or anything, that would have been a setback in our trust and in our relationship. And of course, in the whole training process. That's why we have to be careful about how we stage our training setups and who we invite, right? If we want to work with our dogs and we invite people who just won't follow the rules, who will just do whatever they want, and we have to deal with it, we cannot provide the dog with the safety the dog needs. So those people can come later, right? When the dog's really fluent in the new strategy. And of course, since handymen are not the best training partners, they rush in and out of the house and they leave doors open and all those things, which was a problem with the cats as well. But what I'm trying to say is we had to be very careful about including them in the training process. And most of the time we didn't, because we cannot ask them to just, hey, stand there for a couple of minutes. I need to train my dog while, I don't know, stuff dries in the house, and you would have needed to, I don't know, do things with that. I don't know. So again, choose people that you can actually control, or at least give some directions to, right? And people who will follow your biddings to a point. Like if you have a dog like Makuma, who would not be fine with people just getting up and going to the toilet or getting a glass of water or whatever, we needed the people we invited to tell us before they get up. And some people just have a hard time doing that because it's not something we're used to as humans, right? We're not used to asking permission to get up, and it's not what they're doing, right? They're not asking permission, they're just warning us so we can handle the dog. But it's important. So I'm really happy we had those people around to practice with. And I'm really happy that Makuma found a very loving home, and she continued training, actually with my first trainer, which is very funny, I think, or I set it up, so it's not a coincidence, but I love that they continued training. Tell me in the comments if your dog seemed sneaky to you before, and if you had ever issues with guests. I would love to know. And now, have fun training, and we'll see each other next time. Bye!